Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
It's a new day in New Bedford. Welcome to the Phil Paleologos Show. With updates and breaking news from the WBSM newsroom and on the WBSM app. And your calls and conversation at 508-996-0500. Here he is, New Bedford's #1 talk show host, WBSM's morning mayor, Phil Paleologos.
We know he's there somewhere, Phil. Morning mayor, somewhere. He's down in Florida right now enjoying some time off with his lovely wife Celeste, and we're happy for him for that. And I'm happy to be able to be to guest host his show today and tomorrow, and I'll be here with you Thursday and Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we were just speaking about the impacts of immigration, illegal immigration on our country, on our communities. And I promised you in the earlier hours that I would have a special guest on at 8 o'clock, and he is on the line. He's one of America's great sheriffs and been a real leader on the fighting of the illegal immigration policies of not only this administration but past administrations. And I'm so honored that he's joined us this morning. I'm going to allow call-ins a little bit later during this call for listeners to be able to speak to the sheriff if they have a question. And that's my friend and great American sheriff, Sheriff Sam Page from Rockingham County, North Carolina. Sheriff, are you with us?
I'm with you. Go ahead there, Tom.
Well, great to hear from you again, Sheriff. And how things down in North Carolina?
Well, I think we don't have as much snow as you have.
Well, you never do you?
No, we got a dusting this weekend, and I thought I was going to put my chains on.
Well, the dusting for you might mean, dusting for you might be, I don't know what, a quarter of an inch. That's pretty much a blizzard for you all down there, isn't it?
It's pretty much.
Yeah. Can you speak up a little bit, Sheriff?
Yes.
I've never accused you of being soft-spoken, but you sound like it right now. You there?
Go ahead. I'm with you.
There you go. Okay. So, I was talking about how when I first took over 25 years ago as sheriff, I was working with Barney Frank and Henry Hyde on a bipartisan bill that never made it through. And I know you remember the Gang of Eight. You were down there in Washington with me when the Gang of Eight was trying to come together and do something which never got done. What are your impressions as a sheriff? You're thousands of miles away from the southern border. Why is this important to you, and why should it be important to all the sheriffs across the nation with regards to the priorities of dealing with the illegal immigration?
Well, you got to go back a little bit, Tom, and I know you and I spent a long time together working on the illegal immigration, border enforcement, and other issues that are associated with that situation between Massachusetts and Washington, and between North Carolina and Washington. And a lot of people said, what is the connectivity? Well, 13 years ago when I first got involved with the National Sheriff's Association Border Security Committee, I said, you know what? Based on what I've seen in my travels and my trips to the border area, it won't be long before we start seeing some of these problems in our communities. Well, I made the statement, if we don't secure our borders, every sheriff in America will become a border sheriff. Well, we're there, and we've been there, and we're seeing crime issues. We're seeing issues relating to the illegal drugs that are coming into our country, that are ending up in our communities, and we're seeing a lot of deaths. I was going to kind of allude to this in North Carolina. In our legislature, they're trying to enact a bill. It's the Senate Bill 189. That deals with increasing the penalties for persons that are selling fentanyl, heroin, and other types of serious drugs like that are coming right out of Mexico.
And that's great that they're willing to do that. But but in the interim, that's one way of deterring it. But isn't the real answer to secure the border? I mean, so that isn't that the
to secure the
most
border,
effective?
Tom, to secure the border, the real answer is it's a federal responsibility. It starts at the White House. It starts with the leadership there. 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I wrote a letter to the president asking for help. Again, I'm seeing people die in my community due to the fentanyl that is coming right out of Mexico by way of China to Mexico to local communities across this country. And I wrote a letter asking for help. Also, some recommendations. Number one is we got to start holding people accountable. As we hold people accountable at the local level, our elected officials, we need to hold our officials in Washington, in Congress, at the White House. We need to hold all our officials accountable for what they're doing or not doing. And that's the problem is when you get down to Mexico, we know that the problem is the Mexican drug cartel. We know that they're inside Mexico. We know they're operating pretty much with impunity. And the Mexican government, we don't see, I don't read or see anything or any actions taken to disrupt or dismantle those organizations that are killing people, every day in America. And then only conversation I hear is we don't have a fentanyl, according to the president of Mexico, we don't have a problem in Mexico with fentanyl. You do. You have a problem with addiction. Well, yes, we do. But the problem is the originating source is coming right out of Mexico.
Well, the originating, and that's true, the finished product, but isn't the original source coming directly out of China? And, of course, Mexico can do something about that.
Well, I referenced in my letter that we've got to hold China accountable, and we've got to hold Mexico, the government there, accountable for their inaction on these issues. But, again, I said this the other day also. I said, the sad thing is China is producing a chemical that's killing Americans. What is it say, 108,000 in 2021? Fentanyl had took out that many lives, and it's coming right out of China, right out of their labs.
Yeah, and Sheriff, think about this, and I'd be interested in your thoughts about this. I mean, if President Trump were our president right now, and he knew that the equivalent of one plane crash was happening a day with our young adults dying, which is what the equivalent of what you just spoke about, over 100,000 deaths a year in this country as a result of the fentanyl that Congress and this administration know is happening. What do you think President Trump would do versus what this administration has done? You were at the White House with me on a number of occasions and meetings and with the president, former president, and at a number of different presentations we were doing there with him. What do you think the difference he would have had in reacting to this, knowing that we were losing 200 people a day in this country, which is the equivalent of one plane crash a day? Would he move quickly to react to this?
It's no question. He wouldn't approach it as a politician. Like, let's go back to it. I've been working for 13 years on a lot of these conversations, Tom,
yep.
And you have been working for many years also here in your community in Washington. But no, President Trump would have been a person of action, not words, and he would have held China accountable. He would have held Mexico accountable as he did on more than one occasion. But right now, the administration, sad to say, is they're really not doing anything to hold any of these governments accountable that are resulting in American lives, precious lives lost every day.
And aren't they, are the people of North Carolina feeling like, look, we can't rely on not only this administration, but we certainly can't rely on Congress, who's become so institutionalized and focused on their politics, while people outside in neighborhoods across the nation are standing in their neighborhoods, raising their hands, yelling, we need some help over here, we need some help over here, outside the Capitol proper across the nation. And Congress is saying, you know what, we're too busy. Yeah, I know your kid died last month, and there'll be another 5 or 6 that are going to die the next day or two. But you know what? We're too busy with our politics. Did the people of North Carolina feel that that's kind of what's going on there? And are they as frustrated as I'm hearing people are here in Massachusetts and across the nation?
Well, I've got one new senator, and I've got another senator that's been in place for a term, and I'll say that I've got excellent communications, but those two senators, they have to deal with what more senators, and they have to convince them to look at the bills that they're proposing that have been good if they were passed, but the problem is getting a bill passed. And I think what we're seeing in North Carolina, in different places, is working with our legislature, and even at our local level, we're having to solve problems. We're having to solve our own problems. They say all politics are local. Well, I think most of your fixes are local. And the thing is, we're having to look for solutions to the problems. We know where they originate, but we can't address those issues. But what we can address is the people here, and trying to reduce the chance of the people dying because of substance. We're talking about the drug issues, or even the crime issues. But we are working at the local level, and I think most places around the country, most communities are trying to do the same thing. But our expectation is that the federal government would do more, and starting at the White House. It's sad. You and I both have offered help to the Obama administration. We've offered assistance to other administrations. I know I've offered administration to the Obama administration and to the current administration and the past administration, and we don't have the communications.
Right.
Over the past 2 years, there's been really zero communications between the White House and us officials out in the field, where under the past administration, we had the ability to pick up the phone, talk to people that work with policy to help the administration and ultimately help America and the people that we serve, our citizens.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Sheriff, I'm going to open the lines up for callers. If any callers want to call in and ask questions for the Sheriff, 508-996-0500, 508-996-0500. You're welcome to call in and ask any questions you want to Sheriff Sam Page from Rockingham, North Carolina. Sheriff, you make a great point. What other group in the nation could be closer to the people than America's sheriffs when you think about this, who have their finger on the pulse, who know what's going on in the communities, the impacts that illegal immigration is having, not only in the enforcement for law enforcement effort and their hands being tied by this current administration, but also, the fact that we're not driven by politics. Our job is to uphold the rule of law and represent the people of our communities, and we represent every single member of our county. We don't respond to calls and needs by the people of our community based on their party affiliations. So we are the one group in this nation, elected group in this nation, who answer directly to the people. And when you have an administration like we do right now in Washington, or an apathetic Congress who are saying, you know what, we're too busy for you. When President Trump was in, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, but from my perspective, he was the one president in my lifetime, more than any other, that was more focused on bringing people in, whether you were a sheriff, if it was a medical issue, he'd bring doctors in. He didn't want to hear from the politicians. He had meetings at that White House with people on the topics that were important to America and the people who worked in those fields, so that when he created the solutions and the proposals and the policies and proposals for legislation and whatever else, he did it from a place where it wasn't about first filtering it through the politicians and see what they needed. It was, when I make these policies, I know those people are out in the neighborhoods, in the communities, representing the interests of whatever the topic is, and my solutions will be far better and far more effective because it's going to go directly back to the people without being watered down by the politics that seem to paralyze Washington, D.C. and take away from our ability to get the maximum benefit. Is that fair?
I think it's very fair. There are over 3,000 sheriffs in America that are directly connected to their communities, and we serve all people. Don't care what your party is. Don't care how much money you got. Don't care where you come from. Our job is to look after and support public safety in our communities, looking after our citizens and even our non-citizens. If you call for help, I don't care where you're from. If you call for help, we're there to come try to help and assist you. And so again, I think you're all right. My wish is that this administration was more open to communications with local law enforcement, particularly our sheriffs, because I feel like we do have some great input that could help this administration. And let me tell you something. I don't want to see this administration fail. I want to do my part to help, be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And but we don't have that. And we had that communications with the last administration under President Trump. And to me, I don't know if we ever see that again. But I thought it was very beneficial to have that communications, that if there was a problem that affected a lot of communities across this nation, that a lot of times we see it before other people see it.
Right. And interesting point that you make. How many times have you been to the White House since the Biden administration has been in?
None.
And have you heard of any regular ongoing meetings with the sheriffs with the Biden administration?
Not really. I know the DOJ puts out they put out messaging and stuff like this, and I read what they put out and stuff like this. But and we work. And let me say this, Tom. At the local level, we work with our state, local, and federal partners. We're on the DEA task force, Homeland Security task force. But at the end of the day, they still are driven by policy that originates in D.C.
Which basically has tied the hands of the sheriffs to detain people that they know are illegal, who have been picked up for crimes and things like that.
That's another law that's trying to be enacted down in the legislature of North Carolina on the detainer issues. Which, if you want to go into that just a little bit, we can.
Yeah, we could do. And just to finish up this point, the fact that we're not getting any input and any involvement from the White House or interest in hearing from the people who are closest to the people of our communities across this nation, that being the America sheriffs, I think speaks volumes about their lack of interest in trying to secure these borders and protect our communities. But more to the point, I know for a fact that recently Secretary Mayorkas was supposed to meet with the Western sheriffs down, I think in Arizona or whatever, and was going to offer to meet with them again. And based on their previous meetings with him, which were basically nothing more than a dog and pony show with no action, as we've seen from Secretary Mayorkas. I personally have seen that. I've confronted him in Washington in front of the national sheriffs, major county sheriffs. And of course, he never followed up, because this is a guy who wants to basically go out, look the American people in the eye, lie to them, and then avoid being held accountable for what he has not done and what he misrepresented to the people. And for me, and I obviously I had my own personal experience, but I know that the Western sheriff said, no, we don't want to talk to you, waste our time. We've already had plenty of time that you've basically come in, not listened to what we had to say and walked away and did nothing. And that's what this administration has continued to do. The fact that your legislature in North Carolina is saying, hey, we're going to take a look at maybe making some local improvements on detaining people, at least at the local level, you all are stepping up. I'd love to hear what exactly the proposal is right now. We got about 2 minutes.
Just short version. In North Carolina, there is a proposal for a bill, and the similar bills have come up over the past 2 to 3 years, which basically would require all sheriffs to honor federal detainers, and basically once the detainer is issued and a person's ready to be released, basically we're turning persons over to ICE for the deportation process to remove them from the communities. And I've always said this, that I think it's always safer to remove a criminal, that's any criminal, from the community to help make it safer. And likewise, if a person committing criminal offenses illegally in the country, he's been criminally charged, at the appropriate time, interface with ICE to be removed from the country. And it's a lot safer to do it from the jail setting than it is to release a person than have to go hunt a person out across the county, state, or the country.
Yeah, and it'll basically commit more crimes. The other thing is, I don't know about you, but the frustration of not being able to have these laws enforced and having to fight with Washington to do what should be automatic is got to be very difficult for you and for all the sheriffs across the nation when it's the most basic fundamental responsibility of government, and that is to protect the people of the nation and uphold the rule of law. And we're just not seeing that, and it's very, very sad. And I think, people like yourself on the front line, Sheriff, you've been there. I've worked with you over the years. You've been one of the real leaders on this immigration front in our fight to enforce the rule of law and not allow Congress to pick and choose who they want. To have to abide by the laws and who they don't instead of changing laws, and that's never okay.
Tom, one real quick thing.
Sure.
One quick point. What's hampering us a lot of times also, sheriffs have the ability to communicate to their communities, to their citizens throughout the communities. But the thing, what I'm seeing right now over the past 2 to 2.5 years is that there's very limited media coverage on the real facts of what's going on and what's impacting our citizens. And what's frustrating is I can't tell the story across the board because you have very, very few media sources will cover the real issues that are affecting public safety. You've got, for example, you got Fox on one hand, and then a lot of other media, particularly like the media sources.
Sure.
They're not covering issues that need to be covered that are very important that affect public safety. And so it's frustrating when you try to communicate, and that's even at the regional level. I mean, we get some coverage, but in general, it's not the coverage that you think you would get. But it comes to when I say how many 11 people died last year in my county since July to the present due to overdoses. We Narcan probably 60 or more people. If we didn't have Narcan, that would have been 60 potential deaths.
And what's the population of your county, Sheriff?
It's 92,000, and we've got 5 jurisdictions in the county.
Yep.
But what worries me is these are serious public health life issues, and you really can't get a lot of coverage on it. And to me, when 108,000 people died in America in 2021, there ought to be outrage. What? And there should be, what can we do to reduce that loss of lives? But you don't hear it.
Yep. Yeah.
Again,
So hey, we're coming up on break, Sheriff. But let me just say this: you made some great points. You gave the people of Massachusetts a great opportunity to hear from one of America's great sheriffs who's been on the front lines and continues to be, to try to keep the community safe and hold these people in Washington accountable. God bless you. Keep up the good work. Stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.
We're going to go to break now, and we'll be right back. 508-996-0500 and take your calls. We'll be right back. I'm Tom Hudson. And we're back. We're going to go right to Kate for the news and get back to you callers right after the news.
Good morning. The U.S. will not be deterred from flying in international airspace over the Black Sea. That's what White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said after a Russian fighter jet damaged and forced down a U.S. drone over the Black Sea Tuesday. Kirby called it, quote, unprofessional and unsafe. Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi added the U.S. should, quote, treat Russian President Vladimir Putin as the threat he truly is. A major Wall Street ratings firm is downgrading its outlook on the entire U.S. banking system to negative. Moody's Investors Service said it lowered its outlook from stable to negative to reflect the, quote, rapid deterioration in the operating environment following bank failures that prompted federal regulators to step in. The federal government says it's subjecting 27 drugs to inflation penalties. The Biden administration made the announcement today, meaning people on Medicare will pay less out of pocket starting April 1st. The Inflation Reduction Act signed by President Biden includes a provision that penalizes drug makers for raising prices faster than inflation for people with disabilities or those 65 and older on Medicare. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman reportedly might remain in the hospital as much as 2 more weeks. Fetterman checked himself into Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on February 16th to be treated for clinical depression. CNN's Manu Raju reported on Tuesday that the first-term Democrats' doctors say he's making progress in his recovery and could leave the hospital in the next 2 weeks. Honduras is moving to establish diplomatic relations with China and end its ties with Taiwan. Honduras is one of just 14 countries that diplomatically recognize Taipei over Beijing, but that's about to change. Honduran President Xiomara Castro tweeted on Tuesday that she's instructed her country's foreign minister to, quote, manage the opening of official relations with the People's Republic of China. China refuses to maintain diplomatic ties with any country that recognizes Taiwan. An organization that tracks online crime activity reports that Mexican drug cartel members are a lot more active on Twitter since Elon Musk reduced the platform's safety oversight after buying the company last October. The report by the Alliance to Counter Crime Online found that several previously banned Twitter accounts of known cartel members are now open and active. According to the report, high-profile cartel members use the platform to recruit new members and post violent videos, as well as sending threats to officials, civilians, and rival gang members. The Maine lobster industry is suing California's Monterey Bay Aquarium for defamation. Michael Kastner reports.
The Maine Lobstermen's Association, the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, and 4 other groups say the world-renowned and influential aquarium defamed Maine's $500 million lobster industry when it downgraded the American lobster, leading to boycotts. The lawsuit argues that the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch program urged food sellers and consumers to avoid eating lobster caught in the Gulf of Maine and Georges Bank in Maine. That led stores, including Whole Foods, to stop selling Maine lobster, and restaurants across the country, such as Cheesecake Factory, to stop serving it. I'm Michael Kastner.
Zhang Yanyong, a former military surgeon who blew the whistle on Chinese authorities' cover-up of the 2003 SARS epidemic, has died at the age of 91. BBC News and local media report he died of pneumonia on Saturday in Beijing. Zhang was praised for saving lives after writing a letter in the early stage of the SARS crisis, which revealed officials were playing down the threat. At one point, he was put on house arrest for speaking out. SARS infected more than 8,000 people worldwide in 2003. And the so-called Tiger King is running for president from his prison cell. Trey Thomas reports.
Joseph Maldonado posted on social media over the weekend that he's running for president as a libertarian. The former operator of the Greater Wynwood Exotic Animal Park in Oklahoma is currently in federal prison in a murder-for-hire plot to kill animal rights activist Carol Baskin. On social media, Maldonado says his campaign isn't a joke, and it's his constitutional right, even from prison. I'm Trey Thomas.
In sports, the Bruins have dropped 2 of their last 3 games heading into their next contest. The Bees are currently leading the NHL with 105 points and have already clinched a spot in the postseason. They go up against the Winnipeg Jets on Thursday. And the Celtics take on the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight at 8. Now for a look at your local forecast from ABC 6.
We've got a blustery day today, lots of wind making it feel quite a bit cooler than the high near 46. And we've got winds gusting to as high as 30 to 35 miles per hour. A snow shower this morning turning to a rain shower midday and through the afternoon. Tonight we clear it out, low near 30. And for you Thursday, sunshine to clouds, high near 50. The next rain comes in Friday afternoon. From the ABC 6 Weather Center, I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist Nick Morganelli on New Bedford's News Talk Station, 1420 WBSM.
Right now it is 37 degrees and mostly cloudy. I'm Kate Robinson for WBSM News. Stay up to date with WBSM, New Bedford's News Talk Station, and get breaking news alerts with the WBSM app.
Hello and good morning, everyone. We're coming up on the final hour before Tim Weisberg takes over and begins his great show. But I'm Tom Hodgson, 508-996-0500, 508-996-0500. We were just talking with, and thank you to the Sheriff Sam Page out of Rockingham, North Carolina, who did really a phenomenal job talking about the impacts on the people of his county and sheriffs across the nation. He's been on the front lines fighting this, the impacts of illegal immigration, not only in North Carolina, but along with sheriffs across the nation that are impacted by this problem that both Congress and this current administration just completely right now is ignoring and frankly encouraging. I just, if you didn't know, the current Biden administration is just illegally asserting the authority to parole 360,000 inadmissible aliens into the United States. And it's mind-boggling that they would think that this is okay. In fact, what they're proposing is that they would authorize the parole of people from Haiti, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua at 30,000 immigrants per year. And then by paroling them in, will position them to be legally present in the United States. Why? So that they can cover up the number of people and make it look less with regards to the number of people who are rushing over our border illegally. By doing this, it looks as though it's a legitimate initiative, and it reduces those numbers that otherwise would have just come in illegally without this parole status. The problem is that the President of the United States doesn't have the authority to do this. There are clear limits on his authority as to being able to offer types of parole, and this exceeds his authority to do it. And I'm sure that, like so many other things, like the college tuition forgiveness plan that he had that likely is going to get overturned by the Supreme Court, this one will also be overturned. And thank goodness, because people need to know the facts about how this illegal immigrant problem is impacting them and in how big a number. When you think about the economic impacts from housing, education, healthcare, free cash with debit cards that are being given to people, travel from the border to the interior of the United States, all paid for on taxpayers' dollars. The judicial system, the courts, the number of people that are coming in here, and the increased number of criminally illegal aliens, gang members, and all of that will end up in our courts, the immigration courts. That's all taxpayer-funded operations. The detention, that's costly. Deportation and removal, that costs the American people. And then the selective enforcement that's going on that allow people to remain here who otherwise would have been deported and commit crimes and cause problems in the neighborhood and strains on our infrastructure. These are all taxpayer funded things. The recent Biden budget, you've got this is his proposal in his budget. He proposes $4.7 billion, and that includes for 2,400 EPA employees, 87,000 additional IRS agents. Surprise, surprise. They're handing out money like it's candy, and so now they're trying to find ways to see if they can squeeze more out of the taxpayer with more IRS agents. And then you have 350 border officers, 2,400 EPA employees, 87,000 IRS agents, and 300 additional Border Patrol officers. If that doesn't paint a picture for you of where their priorities are and aren't, and their inability to understand how bad this problem is impacting the American people in our communities and the costs associated with it, I can't think of anything else that's more blatant. They ought to be putting neon lights around it because that's how obvious it is. The $4.7 billion also is to be used to operate existing networks of illegal alien, non-government organizations, shelters at $500 per night, like the Waldorf Astoria, where they're putting up illegal aliens who are not liking the food and wasting all the food on top of the $500 per night. And think about this. I mean, we're talking about rent controls because we don't have enough housing. A lot of other issues that have been discussed on this show and others. Paul Chase was on with Marcus last night. He's the CEO of the Realtors Association of Massachusetts, and he was talking about all the complex issues that are impacting this push for rent control. But the point is, you're giving $500 to illegal aliens that you're encouraging to come to this country, $500 a night for them to stay at the Waldorf Astoria, and we have to have people in our communities who have lived here, supported their churches, civic organizations, worked in New Bedford area all their lives, who can't afford rent. I mean, this is the hypocrisy of what goes on in this current administration under President Biden. They're offering training courses, healthcare checks, the travel routes. All of this are costing additional monies for the taxpayer. And then there's an additional $4 billion that the State Department will be given to fund foreign groups who help foreign groups who are helping foreign groups of migrants travel from around the world into Latin America and end up at the U.S. border. And they're asking for money to convert illegal aliens to being legally present. But think about this. They're requesting less money for detaining and preventing illegal aliens from entering the U.S. and imposing undue hardships on Americans and legal residents. Again, where are their priorities? It's certainly not with the American people. I've got two callers on the line, and I'm going to go to my first caller.
Let's take a break before.
Well, let me back up a minute. I'm going to put you right. If you give me 1 minute, caller, I'm going to come right back to you. We're going to go to break. I have to take the break, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
And we're back. I'm Tom Hodgson filling in for Phil Paleologos, 508-996-0500. I'm going to go right to our calls. I got two callers on the line. I got about 4.5 minutes, so we'll go right to the caller. Hey, caller, how are you? Hello?
Hey, Tom.
Hey, how are you?
Congratulations. You're almost done with hump day.
Yeah.
You're almost there, minutes away. Less drop calls today, less missed calls.
Yeah, I'm trying. And did I drop you yesterday?
This is your WBSM boot camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm learning.
Next week, they're going to sit down and they're going to do a rate and review of you, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're helping me because I think did I drop you again yesterday too?
Yeah.
I told Tim. I said, Tim, I can't believe that. He just finished telling me I dropped 11 calls, and I was like, I'm doing much better. And bingo, I dropped the call. I apologize.
Absolutely.
So
it's good to see you. You've covered a lot of different topics. You've been open-minded. You've listened to a few things people have said, and I've known you well enough to know that sometimes facts and situations can change what we think. And when people jump on, well, you used to say this, do that. Well,
sure.
People have an open mind sometimes. So like you were saying on Monday, sit down and work it out. Let's figure out what this is, good, bad, or different. Go to a table, roll up the sleeves, and let's figure out where compromises. And when you mentioned about Kennedy and Tip O'Neill, and Reagan and Tip O'Neill, that's the way it should be. It's just a shame it's not that way anymore.
And, I think sometimes in order to get out, you have to go through. We're going through right now, but we know we've got past history to look back on, and they really represented the best of America in their ability to do that. And I think there's no question we all have the capacity to do it. We just need to make that a priority.
Be willing.
Yeah, and we will make it happen. And America will be greater than it is today because we embraced that and had that opportunity to do it.
Always a pleasure, my
Likewise,
friend.
my friend.
Bug you the next 2 days. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and I promise I won't drop you again. I don't think. Have a great day. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you for having the North Carolina Sheriff on as well, because people need to hear the impact. If they're not feeling it and seeing it before their own eyes, they need to hear it in words as to the impact they're having by electing, people like Maura Tierney. Maura Healey.
Yeah.
What we're having is they created this problem. They're not coming up with any solution to stem the flow. And what they're saying their solution is we're going to voluntarily ask people to put a cap on their potential profits from owning private property. And number two, we're going to ask the taxpayers to fund more housing. We're not trying to slow down the immigration. we're just going to ask you to fund more properties. And they say, well, it's matched. Yes, matched by additional taxpayer funding. But what the problem I see is before the first occupancy permit for those proposed housing units are available, they're going to be full. And we're still going to be in the same problem.
Yeah. We're coming up on about a minute, but you make some great points, caller. And I have to tell you, particularly around the issue of having, for example, Sheriff Page calling in, I think people need to be able, as you said, to get a grasp of how big this problem is. And it isn't just about us. It's happening everywhere. And once the American people see, I don't care what your party affiliation is, it's more about what is it doing to impact our quality of life as Americans. And I think that you raise a great point that having somebody from the outside.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.